Now, here at the All-Star break around Major League Baseball, we will take a look at both leagues, the pennant prices as we get ready for the remainder of this home stretch of the 2024 MLB season. Now, I'm kind of a stickler when we get to this at the NBA All-Star break here during the Major League Baseball campaign as well. It's the halfway point of the Major League Baseball season, a time to reset, except really it's not. The Yankees have played 98 games. Most teams around the bigs have played at least 95 games this year in Major League Baseball. Out of 162, we're well past that midway point of around 81, but still we use the time to reset now at the break. And we start in the American League. The New York Yankees winning the series this weekend before the All-Star break in Baltimore, unable to complete the sweep yesterday, though, inside Camden Yards. But the Yankees had a 50-cent advantage on the O's entering this weekend set. Now a 70-cent advantage, plus 240 for the Yanks. The O's at plus 310. Donnie, let's start at the top, and then we'll find the value elsewhere around this board. How tightly contested do you think the race for the pennant will be between New York and Baltimore?
Oh, it's going to be like this all the way through. It really is. You got two quality teams in the same division that also are leveling up, or we expect to be leveling up come post All-Star break heading into that trade deadline. You also take a look at the Orioles. Very important for them, as I talked about, just psychology-wise, just to have that game lead over the Yankees, not lose that in that nice little comeback in the ninth inning. But for my money, I do think it reads correctly right now at the FanDuel Sportsbook, where the Yankees at a plus 240 price and a plus 310 price here for the Baltimore Orioles. For me, the two best teams in the American League, and I still do think the Yankees overall will be the better team here, which means they're going to win that division, get home field advantage, and should be able to win the American League pennant. Now, granted, still a long way to go. Injuries are going to happen. But if I'm looking at the team the Yankees have compared to the Orioles, it's pretty even at this point. But I do agree that the Yankees are the slight favorite here in the odds market at the FanDuel Sportsbook.
Even if Baltimore had gone on a tear to end late last week, in fact, they got swept at home by the Cubs and lost 2 of 3 against New York. Let's say the O's had 4.5 game lead in the American League East. I still believe the Yankees would have been an ever so slight favorite, even if just a couple of cents in front of Baltimore, and I agree with the price. Now, the O's are still a young group. Of course, last year were the number 1 seed in the American League postseason, but bounced in that second round in the division series, swept by the Rangers in a best of 5. So those are the two teams at the top, still battling for positioning in their own division. Donnie, I've asked you this question so many different ways throughout the first half of this Major League Baseball campaign. Do you buy any of the stock into the American League Central? Whether it's the Twins, who still trail the Guardians in the division, and Cleveland ever so slightly a better record by a half game over the O's entering the All-Star break. That's the best mark in all of the American League. How about the Astros that have resurfaced at an 8-1 price? Do you think it is worth betting any number outside of those top two teams in the AL?
Yeah, again, you're just looking for darts to throw and say, you know what, if I can get one of these in the bullseye, I can probably make some money, which is why we talked about the Texas Rangers last week at that 80-1 price point to win the World Series, which quite frankly is still there. I believe they're 30-1 up there at this point right now? Yes, 30-1 to win the American League. I don't think that's such a bad option because you're right. If we're looking at teams and if it's top heavy and it's the Orioles and the Yankees who you think are the best two teams, they're in the same division, I agree with that. But also keep in mind, like, we're not like back in like the 1930s. It's like, okay, number 1 and number 2, that's who goes into with home field advantage. Like, no, the Orioles, if they win the division, will have home field advantage, or the Yankees, if they win the AL East. The reason I bring that up is Cleveland Guardians, Minnesota Twins, or Royals. Somebody's going to win that division, which means first round, they're going to get home field advantage as opposed to a wild card team, which would be and/or the Yankees, or excuse me, I should say the Orioles and/or the Yankees. You take a look at the Mariners, Astros, and Rangers. Somebody's going to win that division, Ben. Somebody is going to have home field advantage over the wild card position, and that's what key to try to line up. So for my money, though, do I like the Guardians? I do. 58-37 is a quality record at the All-Star break. Do I like the Twins? 54-42. I do. look at those two teams differently than I would say maybe the upper echelon teams like the Orioles and the Yankees, because I'm not trying to project about what the record is right now. I'm trying to project what that team is going to look at come playoff time. Do we have enough superstar talent in front end rotation with the Guardians and the Minnesota Twins? Because you know what's going to probably happen with the Yankees and the Orioles? They're going to make those acquisitions to beef up their team, knowing that they're going toe-to-toe down the stretch. That's the only reason why I'm sort of downplaying like the Guardians at this point, and the Twins and the Royals in the Central. Now, do I think Seattle's going to make a lot of moves? I actually don't. Do I think the Astros have a ton to make moves with? I don't think so either. Are the Rangers going out to make moves here? No, they have a huge payroll with guys they're hoping to just come back. So getting back to the two teams at the top, the Orioles and the Yankees, that's why I'm so high on those teams. I like what I see right now, and I think they're actually going to improve themselves within 2 weeks. That's why I have those two guys shelved up top. So trusting the Central, I like those teams, Ben. I just don't have trust in them to win it. That's all.
You know, Donnie, I think it is a really fascinating point that you bring up because, again, let's talk about value. What is value? Can you get to a cash out or a hedge out opportunity, or is value cashing the actual ticket? Because right now, I still think the American League runs through the AL East and those two teams at the top. Yes, Houston is playing better. The Astros have been at least in the American League Championship Series each of the past 7 MLB campaigns. But I do find it difficult to look elsewhere and think a team can actually win the pennant as of this moment. However, the wild card race is going to be fascinating. The Yankees, Twins, and Red Sox in those spots right now. The Red Sox still a 20-1 price. I believe there is some value there on Boston if they can be one of those playoff teams in the AL, and I expect them to be. But it's going to be a competitive race for those wild card positions. I say all of that right now because to win a pennant, you need to win, of course, through those playoff rounds in the American League. But as we have seen with the expanded postseason, Donnie, each of the past 2 Octobers, chaos happens. The Rangers were the final team into the American League playoff bracket. They won the pennant, and they won a World Series. So a lot can happen come October, of course.
Oh, of course, yes. And you have a lot more mileage on these arms. So those dominant pitching staffs throughout these summer months here might get a little bit light. We've seen that with Max Scherzer over the years. Dominant during the regular season, runs out of gas at the end. Sometimes it's just a matter of how good those starters are at the end of the season and how your bullpen matches up. But you're right about that. The new wild cards entering into this, everybody has a legitimate chance to win. And also keep in mind, once again, you don't have to win the regular season. You have to win in the playoffs, people, to cash.
But you want to be in those positions, and we'll do the same around the NL next. First in the American League, now in the NL. At the All-Star break around Major League Baseball, where those pennant prices stand and where there might be some value to be had. Let's start, as we did, DRS, in the AL at the top of the National League. The Phils in a marquee matchup in the final week before the All-Star break, sweeping the LA Dodgers at home. And yes, the Phils did lose yesterday 18-3, and yes, they did lose the weekend set against the Oakland Athletics, but still the best team in Major League Baseball, the best record, so of course that carries over to the NL. The Dodgers will enter the All-Star break losing 8 of their last 11 games. So we start at the top. LA still 20 cents in front of the Fightins, plus 180 for Los Angeles, plus 200 for Philadelphia. I ask you this question to begin. Should the Phillies have the second best odds, or should the Phillies be the favorites?
Based on what we've seen over the first half of the season, and granted, I'm going to say the Phillies should be the favorites here, but also you got to take a look at the way the sports books operate as well. There's a lot of money that came in on the Dodgers right away, so that's still playing in to that price point for them. But having said that, also, what did you take away out of that 3-game series where the Philadelphia Phillies swept the Dodgers? Well, you took away that the Phillies are supposed to win those games, and they did, widening their margin, which helps them in that chase for the number 1 overall seed, which they're probably going to get. However, once you get to the playoffs, it's not going to be Aaron Nola versus an opener against the Dodgers like we were seeing over the weekend or last week. That's not going to be the case. The Dodgers, when they get their pitchers back from IL and add on at the deadline, are going to be a much more formidable opponent. The one thing we have to remind ourselves, it's similar to football, right? If you have a very good quarterback, sometimes it doesn't really matter who's around you as long as they're competent. You're going to win your fair share of football games. The reason I equate that to baseball is if you have a dominant pitcher on the mound and your lineup isn't so good, a la the Braves right now, you have a chance to win every single game because the pitcher is the most important position on that field on a game-to-game basis. And you always hear this adage, you're only as good as the starting pitcher and momentum for the next day, right? So when you sort of break that down, the Dodgers have been throwing out junk after junk after
So,
chunk,
yeah.
just trying to get to the deadline. When the Phillies are throwing Zach Wheeler and throwing Aaron Nola out you and Sanchez, that's going to work out much, much better. Case in point, you saw yesterday with the Phillies in Oakland. The Phillies like, well, Wheeler's going to miss his final start. Bullpen game, turns out 18 runs for Oakland. You're only as good as the starting pitcher that you have on the mound that day. And trust me, the Dodgers will be much better with their starting pitching staff, at least we hope, in the months of August, September, and October.
Just quickly here so we can highlight what Oakland did yesterday. 18 runs. They had 3 players hit multiple home runs. Lawrence Butler, Brett Rooker, and Seth Brown. Crazy. Lawrence Butler had 3 home runs and 6 RBIs yesterday. The first time, of course, as you would expect in franchise history for the A's, they've had 3 players hit multiple home runs, 2+ long balls in a single game. Donnie, there are arguments that were kind of jokes, but now I think very true, that the Dodgers IL team could beat their everyday roster at the moment because the starting pitching would have such an upper hand with Tyler Glasnow and Yoshi Yamamoto and Clayton Kershaw and Dustin May still all on the injured list, despite the offensive firepower that might be there on the other side. The Braves, the third best price at plus 460. There are 5 teams around Major League Baseball at this moment that enter the All-Star break with a 9-1 price or better to win a World Series. The Phillies, Dodgers, Yankees, Orioles, and those Braves. In the World Series market, you have to double Atlanta's price to get to Cleveland at 18-1. Are the Braves, in your estimation, Donnie, because of that pitching staff, despite what they don't have in Spencer Strider or Ronald Acuna Jr., is Atlanta still a legitimate contender to win the National League pennant?
I'm going to say no, but let's fast forward and say, we're not going to have any missteps with Sale and or Lopez, and they're just as dominant. Why don't they have a chance at that point? But you're still trying to extrapolate. Is Sale going to be this effective in 60 days? Same thing with Lopez at this point. I'm going to say probably not, and I just don't think they have enough firepower overall. But, as I always tell you guys, that's a great front office. They're going to make adjustments. They're going to improve their team at the deadline. There's something to watch. But by the way, quick little side topic on what happened in Philadelphia again yesterday, Ben. When you like to make me commissioner of sports, explain to me why position players pitch in Major League Baseball and make a mockery of the game late. We don't do that really in any other sport at this point. And also, for the Phillies to say, well, we didn't want to use any of our bullpen. Oh, that's right. Yeah, you know what? They're all spent. They're burnt out. It's a shame they don't have 6 straight days off to try to get that bullpen back with some rest. So you couldn't throw an extra guy out of the bullpen as opposed to Garrett Stubbs giving up run after run, home run after home run. That's embarrassing part of the sport that we don't talk about all that much. There should never, ever be a position player that ever throws a single pitch in a Major League Baseball game. That's ridiculous.
I don't know if you want to be the commissioner of MLB or the manager of the Phillies. See you later, Rob Thompson.